Hey everyone, thank you for coming. And you've made it here, so I want you to say first, it's just like, well done. Oh, I see Jenny's from Minnesota. Welcome, welcome. And I do also want to say that it takes courage to show up for these things, because it means something inside you still alive. There's still a part of you that's reaching for healing and just refusing to let the story end just in suffering. And, and let's be honest, because everyone here has suffered long enough. And yeah, what you're going to realize is that someone else tried to break you, and yes, they damaged you, but look at you, like you're still here, which kind of tells me that you're a survivor. And the responsibility now, and it is a sacred responsibility, is not to carry the mess of somebody else inside your mind forever. It's to learn how to heal it, right? To fix what they left behind, even though it is a mess. And it's not because it was your fault, but because healing is actually your responsibility. It is your birthright. And for those of you that are new to following my feed, I've got like 4,400 videos out there, and I host these sessions regularly. There'll be another one in 2 weeks, so I hope you can attend that one as well. But I want to introduce everyone. I'm Miles, and I'm the founder of Narcovery. And since 2019, I've helped over 1,000 people recover from this form of trauma, and it is a special form of trauma. The training that I've trained in IFS, which is internal family systems, dialectic behavioral therapy, somatic therapy, hypnotherapy, trauma-informed group work. And I've studied under like people that you probably even heard and recognized. Dr. Ramani, Janina Fisher, who's a trauma-informed therapist, Richard Schwartz, who's the godfather of IFS therapy, and Paul McKenna. But the truth is, despite all of those qualifications and the 13 or so different certifications that I have, it's like the truth is what qualifies me the most is that I've been where you are. Because I know how, like emotional abuse, I know what it does to our minds, I know what it does to our body, and I know what it does to our soul. And I also know what it takes to climb out. And that's why Narcovery even exists. And I'm going to explain to everyone what tonight is and what tonight is not. We're not here tonight to analyze narcissists. We're not here to diagnose them or obsess over their behavior, because what I've found is that's a trap, and it doesn't actually heal you. What we're here to do is to walk out of their shadow and more back into your own light, into your own life. Because what heals you actually is healing you, and it's not obsessing. It's not about replaying the past either, but doing the work that actually restores you. And part of that is naming the pain. And here's the truth. Emotional abuse, it rewires your nervous system. And what happens when our nervous system goes under this form of trauma for long periods of time, it keeps you looping, it keeps you ruminating, second-guessing, replaying conversations at 3 o'clock in the morning in your own mind. And it trains you to shrink. To silence yourself, to question your worth. And when it ends, the suffering doesn't actually stop. Right? What happened to us, it kind of echoes in our minds again and again. And emotions kind of like shame linger in the background. And our bodies, our nervous systems, they stay braced for impact. So here's what we're going to do tonight together. And first, I'm going to share how abusive people manipulate your reality so you can finally see the game that they've been playing. And before we close, we'll have a Q&A, and I'll answer your questions directly and give you trauma-informed insights into your own situation. And then, just closing everything up, like what tonight is about you. And it is about recovery. So let me just start this presentation. Present. Cool. I'm gonna share my screen. For those of you watching live, you can just comment here. Anyone who's watching the replay, just put your comments in the text. All right, and share screen. Good. All right, so this is the Narcovery roadmap. I did say that we're going to go through as much as we can today. I don't want to share the entire thing with you because it is a long deck. But you will get a copy of this deck in your email. And the other thing I'm going to do is some of the parts that I've missed. That I'm going to glance over. You're going to watch. There's a video link on YouTube that'll go through some of the stuff that I'm missing. But in this deck, as you go through it, what you're going to realize that this isn't just information. This is actually a roadmap through recovery. And the whole thing is just like after we've gone through these things, like it feels really, really bad. But inside of our bodies, what we find is self-doubt, our nervous system on high alert. These emotions, they calm, and they can be really, really intense. And what ends up happening in these things is you start to lose your identity. And part of us is we forget who we are. And we realize that voice in our head sounds a lot like theirs over time. And, this is for anyone that's ready to stop spiraling and start healing. And this deck has full of information. It's broken down into different parts. These are the different parts. The 4-part abuse cycle, the how it evolves into self-erasure, this 8F recovery roadmap, which takes you through how to reversing the damage. These are all on that link that I shared in the comments. What I'm going to focus on today is the drama triangle and how to rise above toxic dynamics. And what that's going to teach us is we're going to be learning, like in real time, all of the different patterns and stages and roles that are played when we get into these abusive relationships. I'm not going to go through this. This is covered in that video link. So if you can see the chat, I would just click it so it's open, and you can watch it later. But what I'm going to do is I'll give you a brief overview. The abuse cycle is the 4 stages are love bombing and honeymoon phase, calm phase, tension phase, incident, and then it repeats. You go back to love bombing, you go back to the calm, you go back to the tension. There's more incidences. And this happens over time. And what these emotional abusive relationships do is, like, if you think about self-esteem, because what they do is they target self-esteem. And if we entered the relationship with normal self-esteem, what happens is as you go through these abuse cycles is our self-esteem starts to lower and lower and lower. And there comes a breaking point where it's just like, their goal is to crush us. But we hit our bottom. And when we hit that bottom, we go through this abuse cycle, but we do it backwards. And there's more information in this deck. I'm not going to go through it all, but we end up going through it backwards. So we start with a trigger, right? We start with an incident, and then we sit in the tension of that. And there's skills and tools to do that. And then as you sit in the tension, calm kind of appears. And then, self-love appears. And then the next trigger, we go it this way. For most of us, what we're kind of trapped in when we start this recovery process is that we become self-abusive. Even when our abusers aren't gone, or we're in gone no contact, or any of those things, we do this to ourselves, right? We'll get triggered, and then we'll go online, we'll find a video, or we'll just binge watch something, or some kind of avoidant behavior, or something that makes us feel a little bit better until the calm comes. But then we realize that the tension, we haven't healed those wounds, so they come back, and then they trigger us again, and then we can get stuck in these things. Right? And one of the things we can get stuck in is obsessing over the disorder itself, because we can obsess and it'll make us calm our nervous system for a little while. But the core wound doesn't heal. So we have to go through this backwards. But I'm not going to go through this deck, but you can go through it on your own. And there is a link that will take you through it. That's in the comments, and you can see how each of these phases are, and understanding like deep into these incidents, like especially the incident. What you're going to find is like when your relationship first starts, these incidences are really small. They're like little passive aggressive comments, little things that are said, little jabs at your ego, just to see where your weak spots are, and then you go through the love bombing phase again and again, and this cycle is dangerous because it does attack your self-esteem, and it's meant to make you shrink and just silence yourself. And cognitive dissonance is one of those things, because you're dealing with two people here, right? They're two people, so our personalities split, right? There's the person that loves us and takes care of us, but there's also the person that hurts us and manipulates us. So we have to live in these two realities, and that's what cognitive dissonance does. And even when we break up or go no contact or any of those things, what ends up happening is we still long for them. We still want them. We still want them back, and part of it is the brain chemistry changes. The love bombing just shoots us with dopamine, and we get this intimacy and we get these physical connections. And then in time, it's just like we also get the adrenaline and the cortisol, and that's a roller coaster that just keeps happening. These relationships aren't boring, right? But this isn't your fault, and there are ways that we break the cycle. And what this toxic timeline does, like if you understand the love bombing, the calm, the tension, and the incident, right? When we first meet them, it's like, Prince Charming, it's just like the princess in the woods. They're just these beautiful people. And then the tension and the incidents, they're these little passive aggressive comments. But as the relationship goes on, there's more tension and the incidents get bigger and bigger. And now here they might be addressed to other people, oh, my ex or my family or my boss or whatever this is. Here they become directed at you. It's like, oh, you're actually going to wear that? I can't believe you had that second slice of cake. Whatever those passive aggressive comments are, they start going towards you, and they're jabs that are designed to hurt you because they're scoping the landscape to see what actually makes you tick. And then eventually we get to this part where it's just like the relationship just goes back and forth between those environments. But these tension and these incidents, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, all of these things can happen. And if you stay in it for decades, for some of us, and what ends up happening is you're being groomed to walk on eggshells, to guess what their moods are, anticipate their needs. And it is this master and slave. And it is a grooming process. So you can see with the person that you fell in love with is not the person that stays with us over the long term. And they reveal themselves slowly over time, and this is how it's done. And it is a pattern of psychological conditioning. And most of us who have arrived here have kind of gone through this. Most relationships break before they end here or go to here. But some people do get all the way here. And at this point, we're dealing with Stockholm Syndrome. We're dealing with all sorts of different codependency strategies and things like that. I'm not going to go into the details. Again, the link is in the comments, so you can watch that, the presentation on that, or just go really deep and into it. And this is where I talk about reversing the timeline. If you start here in your recovery process, our goal is to get you to here. Our goal is then to get you to here, and eventually you go here. And this is a long process. There is no quick fix to these recovery things. It is a process. And this is the Narcovery 8 Fs, which goes into detail. Because we start with the trigger, and in order to start with the trigger, we need to face our fears. But before we can even face our fears, we have to have a certain degree of a mental, emotional, physical safety, security, and stability. In order for that, we have to be grounded. We have to be present. It has to be something in this moment. And then we have to actually sit in the tension of it, which means feel our feelings. And we're really good at repressing our feelings. And that's the whole problem with recovery, is all those feelings that we buried, all those traumas that we've kind of stuck in the basement of our subconscious. We need to work through them. And it's not a quick process, but we do have to feel those things. And that process involves just remembrance and mourning. Quite often it's just like those emotions have to come up. The anger, we need to kind of address it. The fear, we have to address it. The anxiety, the worry, the shame, the guilt, all of those we have to process. And as we process them, we move through the cycle. It's just we start to find our freedom. And this is where we reconnect and integrate. And it doesn't stop there. This is kind of where you were before the abuse. And eventually we move to post-traumatic growth. Because what you're going to realize is these skills here, they work for everything in life. And once you have them, if you can go through this recovery process, there's really not much in the world that can hold you back, because it's just like you have to go through all of your weaknesses. And I'm not going to go through these steps and phases, but you can read through this deck on your own time, or watch the other video that I've posted to give you an idea of what that is. And there are tools that we need to use in each of these. And some of you probably know all of these things. I am a trauma-informed recovery specialist, so I'm trained in all of these things. And as we kind of go through the process, we begin to heal more and more and more and more. And we just keep doing that. And it applies to our daily life. And you can go through that on your own time. But today, what I actually want to take everyone through is this process. And this is something that I think is a really incredible tool just for us to help understand the dynamics that are kind of being played and just kind of pull it apart. Now, this is called the drama triangle. It's also called the conflict triangle, and I've also seen it called the victim triangle, because all the roles go back to the victim. And it's a very powerful tool. And I'm going to spend time today just kind of going more and more into detail of what this tool is. And I think once you kind of see how it's used, you can also see the benefits of it, and how we can apply it to our recovery process, our interpersonal relationships, dealing with toxic people, all of these things, just by using this thing. And this triangle was developed by a man named Dr. Stephen Karpman. And he was a psychiatrist in the late 60s, and Karpman noticed that during conflict, that's why it's called the drama triangle. During conflict, people fall into one of three default modes. And those modes are the victim, which is poor me. It feels powerless, feels helpless, often emotionally frozen. You got the persecutor role, which is like it's your fault. It's a critical voice, it's controlling, it's angry. And then there's the savior. It's like that, let me fix this. It can be over-helping, could play the rescuing role, the enabler, if you want to call it that, if we look at it in terms of emotional addiction to drama and chaos. And could also be self-sacrificing. But what's crucial to understand is these roles are not fixed, right? And as I kind of explain this, it's just like we play all of these roles. And in the recovery process, we go from this part of the triangle, we go to above the line, and we go to no drama. Because if there's drama playing out, then one of these three roles is being played. And then the roles are going to be switched. And I'll explain exactly what that means. But first, let's start with the lower triangle, because the lower triangle was Dr. Karpman did that, and this is the way that he broke it down. And because what he did was his specialty was dealing with high conflict family dynamics. So it's like families that are just stuck in these high conflict areas. And what he realized is whenever that the client showed up in a high dramatic state, that there were three roles that were being played. Right? Because when we're stuck on the lower triangle, we're emotionally hijacked. And the predominant emotion in that lower triangle is fear and shame. And we get stuck in these survival responses, and that's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And these are old trauma scripts. And the roles that are actually being played is we got the victim mode, which often mirrors the freeze response. It could be a shutdown, self-pity, or hopelessness. We also have the persecutor, and this is the one that mirrors the fight. It's the anger, it's the blame, it's controlling behavior. And then we also have the survivor, and this mirrors the flight and fawn response. And this is the over-apologizing, trying to fix, trying to solve. People-pleasing falls into that. And anything that has to do with avoidance. Addiction kind of fits in the avoidance as well. Because these are all coping strategies. We're trying to save ourselves from our own thoughts. So any kind of avoidance strategy is also being played in the savior role. And we all have our default modes on these things. But that's why this triangle feels like endless, because we're constantly changing roles and we're constantly stuck. And what we're looking to do is just move out of the drama state and into the upper triangle. Now, the upper triangle is the path to no drama, right? It's the path to peace. It's the path to calm. And the upper triangle was, like in the lower triangle, was used for a decade or so, until Lynn Forrest picked it up. And in the 90s, she introduced 3 new roles. And these roles are is how to live above the line. And this is what she called the empowerment triangle. And these roles allow us to respond instead of react. And that's really important, responding instead of reacting. Because this is also where, it leads to truth, to boundaries, to healing. You can read a lot of Brené Brown work on this, on what it takes to respond instead of react, and also boundaries as well. And the first role that we can talk about is the observer role. Right? And this is the opposite of the victim. And the observer is grounded, it's present, it's self-aware, it's asking, what's really going on here? It becomes our ability to just kind of pause for a second, say, wow, and this could be in our own minds. We could be going through a traumatic cycle just in our own brains. And if we just kind of pause and just kind of say, hey, wait a second, what's all of this about? And the next role is the asserter. And this is the exact opposite of the opposite role of the persecutor. And the asserter is boundaries. Right? And it sets clear boundaries without attack. It's a calm no. A persecutor is saying, no, hell no, right? But the asserter is just, no, that's just not going to work. So you can see how, even though the same words are being used, the way that they're delivered, and the presence and the strength that it takes to be on the top triangle when you set a boundary, is really what the recovery work kind of is like. And then we've got the healer, which is opposite to the savior. The savior fixes, the healer heals. And it encourages growth without rescuing. And that's a very big part of this trauma recovery program. Looking for somebody to save us doesn't really save us. It ends up perpetuating the self-abuse cycle. So what we're looking to do here is to encourage growth without rescuing and allow others to do their work. The damage that they caused you is yours to fix. The damage that they carry is also theirs to fix. And creating that space and that separation is what happens. And it also takes time. It takes time. Healing is something that takes time, because quite often it's just like we don't have those skills yet, and those skills take time to learn, and we have to heal all of the damage that's been done. Right? And I'm just going to give you an idea how this plays out, because anytime you turn on the TV or anyone's yelling at each other, what you're going to realize is like, oh, okay, there's drama there. Cool. What's happening? Well, all the roles end up at the victim, right? The persecutor needs to be the victim first. They feel victimized in some way, so they're going to persecute because they're a victim. That's their excuse. And the savior, the enabler, the people pleaser, or any of those other roles, the avoider, all of those, they also come out of a victim. I'm feeling bad. Let me fix it. And if we keep doing that role, then we actually enable the persecutor to persecute us more. And then, they feel like, oh, then I was right. I was the victim, and you enabled me. So what happens when you enable somebody who's persecuting you is they're going to persecute you again and again and again and again and again until we observe and we set a boundary and we heal. So it is 2 different ways of living. And we get invited into that lower triangle. There's an invitation. There's bait. right? We get baited onto that lower triangle. And if you look at any time that before a fight actually starts, it started with bait. Somebody baited us and we took the bait. And before you know it, we got sucked into it. But we're going to take you through a story of the fisherman and the beggar. And this is like one of those old stories. And it comes from that line, like, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. So let's start with the roles that are being played. So the beggar starts as a victim. It's like, I'm starving. Help me. Cool. So he tries to pull the fisherman into the savior role. He gives him an invitation. Remember we were talking about the bait? He's like, can you give me a fish? Right? And if the fisherman agrees, the cycle continues forever. Anytime the beggar is hungry, he goes to the fisherman, and that cycle repeats. But if he refuses, then the beggar can shift roles, right? If you set a boundary with somebody, especially somebody who's toxic, what are they going to do? They're either going to escalate or they're going to go into abandon, right? So it's just like if he refuses, the beggar is going to shift the roles. You set a boundary with somebody who's toxic, they're going to shift their roles, right? And they could play the persecutor role, right? Like, how dare you not help me? Right? Or they could play the victim, like, look at me, how starving I am, and they amp that all up because they just keep sending an invitation to play the savior. You would save my life if you gave me a fish. Now, drama thrives when one person invites another onto the triangle and the other person accepts. But what happens if the fisherman shifts that? Right? What if the fisherman says, no, I won't give you a fish, but I can teach you how to fish, right? And what ends up happening with the roles now, if we set a boundary and say, look, I'm not going to enable you, but I will, help you in different ways. And what's going to happen? Well, the beggar can protest, right? He can say, absolutely not. Or he might accept the offer and just shift up into that role. Now, if the beggar starves, it's not on the responsibility of the fisherman. He gave him a handout, but the guy refused to take it. So it's just like that's what the healer also does, because the healer also knows that in order to heal our pain and our wounds, it's going to require a certain degree of suffering. And it means that we have to process what that is. So you can see how the roles keep changing. And I'm going to give you other stories to kind of give you another sense of it. And this is Jesus on the cross. So this is the story of Easter, right? And what you're going to realize is that, Jesus is the ultimate role model for the upper triangle. Because all throughout his life, if you look at the role that Jesus played, it's just like he never once looked for revenge or blame. He never killed anyone. There was no murder involved. There was no revenge strategies or plots. And he never self-victimized, even in his own death, as he's walking down carrying the cross with the crown of thorns and the cut in his side. He never once played the victim. He just observed. He set boundaries. And, people call him a savior, but, I see him more as a healer. He helped the blind see. He fed the hungry. He went to the exiles and helped them. But he never rescued anyone from their own. What he did was heal. And even if others played out their roles, even if other people refused to follow the path, you let them, right? It's if you want to play the victim, you can. If you want to play the savior, you can. If you want to play the persecutor, you can. What Jesus' job was to stay on the upper triangle. Because even if we look at before Jesus was even on earth, you can imagine, so God was there, and he's watching us persecute each other in war and famine and all of those horrible things that humanity was doing. He's like, man, you guys really need a role model. So if you're looking for a role model, Jesus is actually a really good role model to follow. Because, he's like, even in his death, when he was carrying that that cross, you can see how that played out. Right, so he's carrying his cross, and then one of the disciples come, and what is he? He's a victim. He's been following Jesus for some time, and he was feeling like he was making a lot of progress. And so he goes to Jesus, and he says, "Oh, all right, you know what, Jesus? I'm gonna go up into the hills. I'm gonna get some of the other disciples, and we're gonna come, and we're gonna persecute these Romans, and we're gonna save you." Right? But the whole thing is just like, if I was Jesus, I'd be like, dude, have you not listened to anything that I've said? Have you listened to anything that I've said? Because none of those plans that you said are what my teachings are. His actual answer is just forgive them, for they know not what they do. They're playing out their own dramas in their own heads. For whatever reason, Jesus threatened their own existence, so they had to persecute him, right? But even in his death, he's just like, no. But that is the combined voice of the observer, the asserter, and the healer. I'll give you another story here, and this is Star Wars, right? For all the people that are Star Wars, and this is the relationship kind of with Luke Skywalker and Yoda. Because if you think about the way that Star Wars begins, at the very beginning he loses his aunt and uncle. So what role is he playing? He's playing the victim. It's like, oh my God, I lost my aunt and uncle. And then, what does he want to do? He wants to persecute the Empire, and he was trying to save the galaxy from their tyranny, right? So you can see how Star Wars kind of plays out, but his transformation comes through Yoda, right? Yoda plays the role of the observer, the asserter, and the healer. And through trauma work, through breathing, through training, through discipline, through movement. This is all Jedi training in a sense. Because if you look at what Yoda did with Luke, a lot of that was Jedi training, is also trauma work. And what he was teaching Luke is how to regulate himself, how to regulate these intense emotions, how to process his own traumas. And the big pivotal moment in Return of the Jedi, in The Empire Strikes Back, is when he's in his training and Luke faces his greatest enemy, right? They're standing outside of the cave and they hear a noise inside the cave. And Luke goes to Yoda and says, "What's that noise?" And Yoda says, "Well, that's your worst enemy." So what does he do? He pulls out his sword, right? His lightsaber. And Yoda, being Yoda, if it was me, I'd be like, take that away. It's like, dude, I'm 400 years old. I've trained 1,000 Jedis. And if I say you don't need that, you don't need that. But he doesn't, right? He observes, he asserts. He's like, all right, Luke's going to have to learn this lesson the hard way. Go ahead. That's what the healer does. It allows people to make mistakes, but he's also there to teach them a lesson at the end. And sure enough, he goes inside and he finds Darth Vader. They have a sword fight. And he cuts off Darth Vader's head. And it rolls down. And then the mask opens. And what Luke sees is his own face. And from that point on, you can see how he went from the lower triangle to the upper triangle, because Luke's character after that moment was never the same. Right? And the whole message there is we are our own worst enemy. And when we realize that we self-persecute and we play the victim in our own minds, we avoid, we enable, and then we repeat those patterns again and again. Eventually we switch to playing more of the Yoda role or the Jesus role, which is observe your own drama. Set boundaries to it. Give it a little bit of space for us to do it, and then heal. Actually process what this is. And the 8F formula that I had earlier in the deck is one of the tools that we use in order to go through that. Right? And then I also want to take you through the story of Romeo and Juliet, because tragedies. What are tragedies? Tragedies are usually with most movies, and if you look at the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, it's usually by Act 3. They go from the lower triangle to the upper triangle. There's a spark of some kind of wisdom, and they rise above it. But tragedies are different, because tragedies always end in tragedy, hence the name. And Romeo and Juliet is one of those. We've got two lovers that are trapped in roles. They're both victims. And why? Because the Montagues and the Capulets are fighting, and they've fallen in love. And then the savior, that's all that scheming. The whole act two of Romeo and Juliet is scheming to fix it. And then, you got the persecutors. They're persecuting in the sense they're defying their families. And then they end up blaming fate in the end. And the result is mutual destruction, right? Because if we look at just even the last scene of Romeo and Juliet, it's just like, Juliet's there, and she's not poisoned, but she's out. And in comes Romeo, and he's the victim, right? The love of my life is dead. So what does he try to do? He wants to save himself from his own misery. So he persecutes himself and ends his life. And then she wakes up, and now she's the victim. Her lover is now dead. So she repeats the same thing. And you can see how that story doesn't end in there. But that said, if we add when we watch a tragedy like that, if we become the audience, we're observing at the chaos of society, of a world, of our own dramas playing out, and we can learn that by example, that we can set a boundary, and that this tragedy can be averted. These relationships don't have to end in misery. And the practical takeaways is like drama requires rules, right? And my suggestion here is like, don't play one. If you don't play the victim, if you don't play the persecutor, if you don't play the savior, you play one of those other three roles. You can play the observer, just by witness without judgment, heal without rescuing, and set boundaries without anger. Those are the asserter, the healer, and the observer. And you can ask yourself in a moment of conflict, anytime that there's drama, whether it's inside your own mind, because you're going to have a victim part in your own mind that needs healing. You're going to have a persecutor voice that persecutes yourself, and you're going to have an avoider or an enabler that's going to play out these different dramas. And the more often that we can start with the observer, notice what our own dysfunctions are, our own patterns of behaviors are, and then heal those just piece by piece by going through the abuse cycle backwards, that we end up spending more time on the upper triangle and less time on the lower triangle. And the drama triangle in a high conflict environment. Right? This is how to stay grounded, to set boundaries, to keep your power when the stakes are high. Because remember, high conflict situations are designed to pull you into the drama and let the drama triangle become your compass. When the emotions become intense, you're on the triangle. So part of it is awareness, because once you're aware that you're on the triangle, well, then you have some power. Otherwise, you're just a victim of the triangle, and you're both trying to play competing persecutors or competing victims or even competing saviors. And the roles constantly change, and they change quick. So before reacting, pause and ask, am I being pulled onto the role? Which role are you being invited to play? Being invited to play the victim, the persecutor, or the savior? Are they trying to bait you so you can yell at them? Are they trying to play the victim so you can enable them? What are those roles that are being played? And then who's playing what role? If you're in drama, what role am I playing? And then don't play that role. And then what's the bait? Is it a guilt trip? Is it an accusation? Is it an emotional plea? Just seeing the triangle plays as it plays out helps you step outside of it. And then using the triangle, the first step is don't take the bait. Right? You don't owe anyone, especially what you're going to realize, and especially if you're still in contact with these people, they're going to want instant validation. They want instant responses. We don't owe anyone an immediate emotional response. We can need some time to calm things down and create some space for ourselves. And we don't have to prove our worth or our truth or even our sanity to anyone. If people want to label you as something, let them. If they want to call you names, let them. If they're going to discredit your reputation, just let them. But you can repair it in time. But you don't have to save, you don't have to fix, you don't have to appease anyone. Because when somebody says something inflammatory, especially in legal or family systems, and anyone has had to deal with that, you'll see what a messed up that system is. Expect that as bait, right? If they accuse you of something you didn't do, if you become, then all of a sudden it's just like you do look guilty, even if you're not. So it just kind of becomes staying in that upper triangle, observing, setting a boundary, and then moving forward. Because even if you look at that Jedi model, the Jedi does fight back, right? They do fight in self-defense, but they don't instigate, they don't provoke. All of those things are lower triangle things, and that's the move in the lower triangle. Is just choose not to play any of those three roles, and repeat that again and again and again. And the other thing is to step into the upper triangle as often as you can. When we first start this healing process, it's going to take time. But keep going back to that observer. What's true for me right now? Right? Where's the projection coming from? This is probably not coming from you. And then what is mine to carry? What's on this side of the fence? You're responsible for what's on your side of the fence. They're responsible for what's their side of the fence. So you decide what's mine to carry. And then what boundary is needed, right? If an action or a behavior isn't acceptable, well, then this is my boundary. And that could mean ending this conversation right now. It could mean other forms of repercussion, right? It's just then the healer plays the role. It's like, I see that you're hurting, but I won't let you harm me. And or it's like, I won't enable that behavior anymore. Or I choose peace over control. And from all of it, it's just like we learn to speak with more and more clarity, not from reactivity. Right? And just putting it all together. Because healing means reversing the cycle. We were love bombed, so we have to switch that to trust. And you felt calm, so in that calm phase, you opened up. You showed your vulnerability, and they used that against you. The whole thing it's just like, all right. So then the tension crept in, so you self-blamed. And then came the incident, and your self-worth cracked. Our self-esteem drops over time. And we slowly lose our identity. And that's walking through the cycle in reverse. And then I go into more details of how we do that. But I will stop presenting this now. And let me know what you guys got out of this. Is this something that you've seen before? Have you seen the different the sessions before, the drama triangle? Kelly says, seems like healing is a full-time job. How do you balance between work, family, and other responsibilities? Seems life has to slow down and make space, but not to be too busy for a reason. A lot of that has to do with just being present-centered awareness more and more. What we learn over time is that those little moments that we have to ourselves, that little bit of self-reflection, those moments become those little seeds that we grow over time, right? And there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can use somatic therapy. We can use different kinds of growth strategies. We can use journaling. We can use different ways of just finding peace and calm over time. Does that help, Kelly? I don't know if you're still there. But it is a really important question. I'm glad that you asked that, because you're absolutely right. Go ahead, yeah. But you're right, healing it can feel like it's a full-time job in the beginning, but that's because for years what you're dealing with is a nervous system that was doing the wrong job, right? Because in order to survive that chaos, what you're doing is you're managing your own moods, and you also have to manage somebody else's. But the way to manage somebody else's is you start abandoning your own needs. And in the healing process, we start actually using our own needs first. And when you finally start healing, so your system has to relearn everything, right? And it becomes a process of learning how to rest, how to safely feel and express your emotions. We learn how to set boundaries, how to say no, and how to exist without that hypervigilance, because we spend so much time in hypervigilance, and that takes energy, and it takes time, but there is a key that it's not forever. right? Healing is a season that we go through. And in the early stages of healing, life does need to slow down for us so we can process these feelings and emotions. Otherwise, we're just constantly we're abusing ourselves. And yeah, you can try to keep everything going at full speed. You can. But what you're going to notice is your system is going to start to get overwhelmed. And you can stay in these stuck, frozen states for a long time. Or if you push too hard at the beginning, you'll burn out. And then we're dealing with a complete shutdown at that point. But the goal, especially in the early stages, isn't to balance everything. The goal is actually to reprioritize and let some things get simpler, allow space for others, creating boundaries and that's what boundaries do for us. They help us kind of slow down and move things around. And so in that healing process, one of the things we have to kind of accept is maybe the house isn't going to be spotless. Maybe we're not going to be able to make all our plans for the next little while. And maybe you need to take 10 minutes in the car before you walk inside. Right? Having those little gaps and those spaces. And maybe you let yourself rest instead of hustle. Taking the load off of your daily stuff. Because the healing asks you to make space. And that space isn't forever, but it is for a season. Because what we need to do is get your nervous system to stabilize. We have to get that calm part of you to come forward once again. And once that happens, then life actually does start to get easier to carry. Because you have more capacity at that point, not less. And yeah, if it does feel like a full-time job right now, that's okay, that's normal. This is actually part of that journey where you rebuild yourself not to perform to somebody else. And in that process, you're giving yourself permission to slow down. That's an important part of healing. I hope that answers your question. Well, I see you said thank you. Thank you for learning to be gentle is okay. And that's exactly it. And I've got all sorts of posts and stuff that can help. I think there's like 4,400 videos out right now. Go ahead, Ali. What's your question? How you feeling? What's your state right now?
Hey, Miles. Thank you so much. That was quite a presentation. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you included a link for us to view it again or acquire it. Is there an ability to watch the replay of this, or how does that work?
Yeah, in a couple of days I'll post this replay onto YouTube. The parts that I skipped over, those I've covered in a previous session, and
with the slide deck.
Yeah, with the slides where I go through those slides. I'm going to post that link again just so you have it.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Appreciate it.
And that's that one, and that one will actually take you into the abuse cycle in more detail, and that'll probably help you understand the drama triangle a little bit better. But what is it that you're going through now?
Yeah, I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm not sure how to exactly label it. I'm in this kind of liminal space of experiencing the tension of being quite boundaried, living a very boundaried existence with my family of origin. Here we are at the holidays, and there are bids for connection where I'm invited places that I have historically experienced as not safe places with not safe people, and not wholly safe nor wholly unsafe. And so they have somewhat covert malignant tendencies. However, they're also really nice, and so many people love and adore my family. And I didn't realize this was a thing. I thought we were just amazingly, deeply connected, loving family that was always showing up for one another in the trenches. And that just wasn't quite the case. And I didn't realize it until a few years ago. And so my nervous system is feeling very activated because I am leaning out of spaces that I have historically been leaning into. And so today, I'm in a meeting. Not right now. I'm in a meeting. I'm talking. Thanks. So the thing that's so interesting is, and I'm kidding you not, I'm at my parents' house right now. My dad is deceased, but whenever I'm talking about this, my mother comes in, knocks on the door and comes in the room. Like, what is that? Is there like some magnet for when we're healing? They sense it and attempt to disrupt it? Is there a spiritual component? I have my thoughts. However, it's a thing, and I kid you not, because it happens with such regularity. I don't think she's not. Okay. Anyway, the point that I'm making, though, is I am tired. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. I've been healing at a breakneck speed, I think.
Okay.
And I'm doing so many things great. However, what is reasonable? I've heard it said it's impossible to heal if you're still in connection with the people who perpetrated against you.
Well, like, do you know Dr. Ramani at all? Have you ever followed any of her work?
I love Dr. Ramani.
Okay. Yeah, no, I got my narcissistic abuse clinician training through her, and she deals with the South Asian family systems, right? And they can't get divorced.
No.
Right? You can absolutely, and not all my clients are divorced, right, or separated, or any of those things. There are strategies and stuff that you can go, and what you're going to realize, even while you go through the healing process, and it's difficult, is you still will be able to spend time with them. It's just a different way of doing coping in those environments, and part of it is just recognizing the drama triangle, right, and that sixth sense. It's just like, moms feel like, are we talking about that? And it's like, all right, okay, maybe I'm going to come in and just be curious. All of those things, trying to disrupt whatever it is that she might be to disrupt. But what you're actually describing is just a very real stage of trauma recovery. And thank you for bringing that up, because I bet you a lot of people know what this liminal space is. It's kind of like an in-between zone where you're not who you used to be, but you're also not fully anchored in got that healed version of yourself. It's that transition state. And, and Brene Brown calls it the messy middle. And there's a great name for it, because it is messy, right? Because we're shedding our old skin. And keep in mind, all those old survival strategies, you needed those. And now that you're kind of going through the healing system, now we've got, like, it's shedding, you've shedded an old skin, like a snake, right? It sheds its skin. Yeah. Because the skin that it was in was too small. So now you're in a bigger skin, and your skin is raw. And what's going to take, it's going to take time for that skin to kind of toughen up. But, when you begin to set boundaries, especially with family, it's like your body shifts out of old roles, right? Even though you may have been used to playing this role within those family dynamics, you can still stay in those family dynamics just without playing those old roles. And that's going to make people uncomfortable for a little while, in which case they're going to have to learn to adapt to that. But what you're suddenly saying no in places that used to accommodate or used to people please, that alone creates internal friction, because your system is so used to saying yes, whatever you want. Right? And you're equating compliance with safety, and that's what you did at a younger age. You traded compliance for safety. And part of that is just, feels like they have this mythical thing. Like whenever you step into a healing process, you're changing your role. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries are going to notice something shifting. And especially with the people that groomed you into those states. Just like, damn, can you imagine? It's just like even with Dr. Ramani's, like when she's dealing with all of these people, it's just like these abusers abuse their victims for years. And all of a sudden they're saying, I don't want to play that role anymore. I'm not going to leave you, but I'm not going to change that role. Do you know how much work it took to groom somebody to be submissive and to be placated? And suddenly they're saying, I'm not going to play that role anymore. That's going to cause some conflict, because what's happening here is you're actually creating a shift. And it's a positive shift for you. So what are they going to do? They're going to test it. Right? They're going to get activated. It's just going to be like, what is all of this going on? And they may not be doing this consciously, and it could be like you're speaking energetically, and that's an important thing, that you're even noticing the energy shifts when you step into the room with your power, with people that are used to stepping on your power. Good. That's what I'm saying. Good, absolutely, perfect. It's going exactly how it should, because your nervous system is learning what safe enough is starting to feel like, and that's different, that's new. And because it's new, it can tell the difference between unsafe people, uncertain people, and emotionally inconsistent people. And what you're going to notice as you kind of do more of that work, and I suggest booking a call, and I can talk you through through the different programs that I have. It's not a quick process. I don't offer anything that's quick. But it is teaching your body to connect to things in a different way. And this is why your family suddenly, maybe they get louder, maybe they push away. Maybe they do both at the same time. But you're dysregulating them, which is fine. Play the healer role, not the savior. Don't try to make them feel better. Give them time to adjust to this new you that's stepping forward. Because you're actually breaking generational patterns at this point. And if you think you can do it just by, doing a mantra in a mirror before you step into a dinner, that's not how it works. It's going to take a lot more work than that. The system actually responds by playing that role, realizing it's uncomfortable, and then playing it again and again and again until it is comfortable. Because this is actually a sign that your boundaries are working, right? That's a sign that your boundaries are working. Absolutely. There should be tension. If there's no tension, then it's not a boundary. And the tension you feel isn't a warning. It's a growth pain. And you're talking about, growing pains right now. I'm like, that's perfect. Great. You're growing out of that old skin. And what you're doing is you're taking up more space in the world. And your system has to recalibrate to that because you're not used to being bigger. Because your identity is reorganizing, your body is learning a new map for safety, and that takes time. But there is a growth strategy that I can take you through, but what my suggestion to you is just keep holding that boundary, keep noticing these sensations, keep choosing yourself, even when that old role. It's just like I used to, I wanna, it's okay. And this liminal phase that you're in is temporary, but thankfully it's just like you're in a good part of your growth cycle. That things are starting to shift for you. If you want to talk one-on-one, I've sent a link in the chat, and that's my personal calendar. It's not going to take you to anyone else. I do set aside spots every week to just kind of talk to people and see if having a guide or somebody to take you through it is going to help, and then you can decide. But I would suggest just booking a call, and we'll see what the next steps are.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miles. And as an FYI, I'm super duper comfortable disappointing people. I'm super duper comfortable with my no's being my no's and my yeses being my yes. So I'm not at all feeling tension around showing up, being assertive, and standing in my authentic power. Yeah. And also owning my self-agency. I think I've done a great job with that. It's just that, and I'll reach out. Not all of us are able to go no contact, and I'm not able to go no contact. And so as a result, it's an interesting dynamic because I'm working on self-individuation and, unenmeshing and that kind of thing.
And I can help you speed through that process a little bit quicker. There are different kinds of tools that I use that are really helpful. Because part of it is we do have to heal our traumas. The traumas dictate the roles that we have. Once we heal our traumas, then we can create new roles. And those new roles are going to be more difficult at first, but they're also going to feel more natural in time. At first, they're going to be uncomfortable as hell. But in time, you're going to realize that role that I used to play isn't my purpose. It isn't my destiny. And you can kind of, even imagine where you want to be a year from now. You're not this person. You're going to grow into something else.
Wonderful. And you help us to figure that out, like what's ahead, like who, you touched on identity. And I'm noticing that there's this reorganizing, occurring, this recalibration for sure, where I am starting to inquire about, well, I really no longer feel like the trauma survivor is a label that I'm comfortable with,
Yeah. And we wear that role for a while because it gets us attention and get us a little bit of support. But that role gets old. It gets stale. It ends up it ends up you're going around the world looking for somebody to listen to your sad stories. But the whole thing is, it's just like, all right, but now you've become your traumas. But what if your traumas, and here's a couple of different examples of what I'm talking about. Two people could be in a plane crash, right? And they could be sitting right next to each other. And everyone dies on the flight except these two people. One person is afraid to leave the house because the plane fell out of the sky. The world is dangerous. I must never fly again, must do anything. Same experience, sitting right next to them, comes out of there. It's like, oh my God, I can survive a plane crash. I am invincible. If I can do that, hell, and they go off and skydive and paraglide and do whatever the hell that they want because they survived that. If you look at everything that happened to you in the past, you survived that. Okay, so what if if this is the most difficult thing that you have to do is overcome these traumas? Okay, so then, writing a book doesn't seem like that big of a trauma, does it? Writing a speech or a movie or getting a raise or starting your own company or any of those things. It's just like, man, but you did that. Everything else is small potatoes. Kelly says, is that why we can feel guilty or conditioned to feel like we're abandoning people that focus on themselves? Well, yeah. That's a really great question. Thanks, Kelly. That guilt that you feel when you focus on yourself is 100% conditioning, right? And it's also not truth. When you grow up around, narcissism and just emotional instability, the people that couldn't regulate themselves, you learn very early on that it's your job to hold everything together. That little savior role on the lower triangle. You need that. The family needs you to play that role so the family can stay dysfunctional. And then if you say, I'm not going to play that role, you're doing what? You're abandoning a family system where you were always the mediator. You were always the caretaker. You were always the emotional sponge for others, right? The one who anticipates other people's needs. And you stop doing that role, the entire family dynamic is just like, we structured this so tightly and precisely, and that is your role. That's what you have to play. And it's not because you did anything wrong, but it's because your value came from being useful. You were rewarded for that behavior, and your mind said, that's the role I need to play. And then you can be like Allie, who's just kind of like, hey, wait a second. I see this little dynamic. I see what's kind of being played. And I don't necessarily want to play that role. And I'm going to do something a little bit differently. And it's working when, like, hey, what are you doing? I need you to play that role. You have to play that role because the family needs you to play that role. It's like, but that role is eating me alive. Right? Because it's causing you to, your safety is coming from being agreeable. Well, that doesn't actually help your growth in any way. You're becoming, your belonging came from self-abandonment. You had to abandon your needs to take care of others, and your identity came from, meeting other people's needs. So, of course, it feels like abandoning others when you stop abandoning yourself. And that guilt is an evidence that you're doing anything wrong. It's evidence that you're healing a lifelong pattern, and that pattern takes time to break. And in time, it does break. Having support, having somebody who had to go through it to guide you through it also helps, right? It's like you can love people without disappearing for them, right? You can set a boundary. It's just you don't have to abandon your family dynamics or your parents. You can set a boundary and still be a good person. You can say, no, I'm not going to be the emotional dumping bag for this toxic dynamic anymore. And they can get upset about that. But it doesn't make you a bad person. They can label you a bad person. Cool, but look at what they're playing. They're playing the victim. We're so used to this toxic dynamic, and you're changing the roles. Now I'm going to persecute you. You're a bad person for not being my emotional punching bag. Yeah. So that's what the healer does. If you go to the upper triangle, it's like they're going to suffer because you're changing your role. And guilt isn't a stop sign. Guilt is just a withdrawal symptom from the self-abandonment that you're so used to. And the more that you choose yourself, the quieter it becomes. Yeah, go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Miles, you mentioned earlier, and I quote, the damage that they caused you is yours to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm noticing the more that I wept this into my understanding and my operating reality,
Mm-hmm.
the more I'm okay doing the work without this sense of maybe resentment is too strong. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But feeling like, I detest and bemoan the fact that I was set on this journey that I didn't choose. And it completely is running roughshod to the plans that I had for myself. Yet I honestly feel that the superpowers that have come from it, and you just touched on it earlier, have perhaps elevated the path in ways that I would not have known nor anticipated. However, what I'm noticing, especially here as we're embarking upon the holiday season, I'm noticing that the disinformation, all the false narratives, the entire smear campaign that other family members have been privy to is causing me to feel away because it's just helping me to realize more and more that maybe it's safer to swim to other shores than to remain in my family of origin because the pervasiveness of the damage that's been done is too big for me to overcome as one person. Like, it doesn't feel welcoming. It doesn't feel safe, even though everyone's being nice. And they're like, "Oh, hey, baby," is that? Yet I know that I heard you on the phone. I heard what you really think when you didn't know that I could overhear part of the conversation. So it feels disingenuous. Can you address that?
Yeah, like what you're realizing is basically at the core and the heart of recovery, right? The damage that they cause becomes yours to heal, absolutely. But it's not because it's your fault, but because you're the one who wants a life beyond this wreckage. It's just like, yeah, you're on a shipwreck and you have a role to play on that. And you're right. The more that you accept that truth that it is yours to fix, not theirs. Yeah, you're going to realize that the less resentment that there is. We're still going to look and see all this damage that's done. We do have to fix it. But you didn't choose this journey. You are choosing what you do with it. Right? So if you think of it that way, it's like you're not choosing this path of recovery, but you're choosing what to do with it. And the skills and the insight, the intuition that you've already talked about, the emotional depth that you've gained are absolutely superpowers. Survivors don't come out weak. The strongest people I know, the toughest, most resilient people I know, have had the toughest lives. Right? They've had more chaos, they've had more traumas, more anything in order to be that. So if we were to take those traumas and the suffering that they had away, would they be those people? So here's a chance for you to change your roles. So now holidays are around the corner, so everything gets louder. Old roles are going to come in, old expectations are going to come in, these family dynamics, the smear campaigns, false narratives, that triangulation, you're going to notice that playing out in real time. Don't take the bait. Right? These emotional bids, the guilt hooks. Right? What you're feeling is this tug of war between escaping and then leaning in. And this is your nervous system trying to decide between fight or flight or conscious empowerment. Right? And it's not about fight or flight. It's neither of those are going to get you to where conscious empowerment is. They seem similar, but they're not in the terms of execution. Right? Because here's the thing: is like you don't have to escape. And you don't have to surrender. Right? You get to stand in your truth without abandoning yourself. Right? Because leaning in doesn't mean participating in the dysfunction. It means staying grounded in who you are while the old system goes and does whatever it always does. Because the smear campaign, the false narratives, they only work when you need the validation of those people. Imagine snapping my fingers just like that and you didn't need their validation. You can let them talk about whatever it is. But here's an example, and this is what I use with clients. All right, Ali, I'm going to call you a name. I'm going to call you an apple tree, right? And, I've had 10 million people watch my videos over the last couple of years. And I'm going to do posts for the next week where I'm just going to say, Ali is an apple tree. I know it with 100% certainty. I'll get a big billboard in front of your house with a big arrow. I'm going to say, you are an apple tree. right? And the whole thing is like, do you defend yourself? Do you go out and say, what do you mean I'm an apple tree? It's the same as them calling you weak or manipulative or this or that. It doesn't stick because it's not true, right? And the whole thing is, I can call you an apple tree, but I want you to realize that that's not 100% made up. Right? We share, 42% of our DNA with all matter and energy? 42% of apple tree. 42% of that statement is true. But I want you to notice what happens when you shift from, partial truths, because that's what smear campaigns are. They'll take 3 or 4 things that are true, and then they'll write 7 or 8 things based on that are exact opposite of what the actual reality is. Right? But I want you to accept 100% truth versus 30% truth, right? And if somebody says something that's partially true, but the entire narrative's true, we just toss that out. It's the same as me calling you an apple tree and you getting offended over it, because you're not offended when I call you an apple tree. And keep in mind, I could tell 10 million people tomorrow that you're an apple tree. They'll think I'm crazy, but whatever. I'm just making a point, right? But all we got to do is just keep holding your boundaries. Know who you are, and let their stories be their stories. Don't climb into the mud with them, because don't play the victim. If somebody's going to call you, whatever it is, if you look at the people that we used in the examples for the drama triangle, which is the fishermen. The fishermen you can keep giving these people fish. What are they looking for? They're looking for attention. They're looking for validation. They want to see you triggered. They want to see you. You can keep doing that. Right? You're rewarding their behavior, so they'll do it again. They'll come back when they're hungry and say, "Give me another fish," and that's just a metaphor for that. But look at the other examples like Yoda. Right, you short little, tiny little muppet, right? He's still got Jedi skills and can still kick my ass, right? And Jesus is like another example of just upper triangle stuff. It's like, what smear campaigns the Romans did in order to put him onto a cross? What they called him, a heretic and this and that and all of those other things. It's not true. But if he became defensive over it, and if he became like a victim and played their game better, then he would absolutely be them. So yeah, just keep being you. Keep being you. Good. Well, I hope that answers your questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for tonight. There'll be another one in 2 weeks. And if you want to know more about the recovery programs I have, they're all like you're looking at a long commitment of time, and depending on how far the trauma actually goes, you are looking at like a good year of working on yourself, and I'll be there the whole step of the way. My immersion programs are 2.5 hours a week. That's what kind of commitment it takes. It's a 1 hour a week of just you and me, and then 90 minutes a week of group work. Because it's just like we've been through those abuse cycles. So what we do is we create these spaces where we can go through healing cycles. Every single thing that triggers us, we dismantle. If you think about who you want to be a year from now, everything that we do is to get rid of everything that gets in your way. And, just like Luke Skywalker, you're your own worst enemy. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Please keep following my feeds. Keep posting your comments in the sections. It's important that this information gets out. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks, and reach out to me directly. You have my email, and I sent the link to my calendar if you wanna just kind of set up one-on-one. I do keep spots available in my calendar every week for people, and can talk you through what's the next steps are. All right. Have a good night, everyone.